Hey, I'm Mr. B, and today we're going to be going over completing the square. Completing the square is kind of a very complicated topic, so I'm going to try and keep it as simple as I can. The first thing I'm going to say about completing the square is that I use it when I have three terms, and normally when I have three terms, I like to factor. To factor, I want to think of what multiplies to negative 11 adds to negative 6. And if you think for a second, you'll see that nothing can multiply to negative 11, but also get me to a negative 6 that I can think of in my head. So when I can't think of the factors, that's when I will complete the square. Here are my steps. Step 1, I'm going to kick out the number that is preventing me from factoring. So there's a minus 11 here, so I'm going to add 11 to kick it out of this side of the equation. If I do it to the left side, I must also do it to the right side. I'm left with x squared minus 6x equals 11. I kicked out that minus 11. But now I need to replace it with a number that I like better. To figure out what number I like better, I'm going to take this b term and divide it by 2 and then square it. That's kind of the hardest part to remember in my opinion, but it's always b divided by 2 squared. So in this example, it's negative 6 divided by 2 squared. Negative 6 divided by 2, that's negative 3. Negative 3 squared, that is 9. So I'm going to add 9 into that spot there. And if I add 9 to this left side, I must remember to add 9 to that right side. Just to recap what we did. All I did, I saw three terms. I tried to factor, I couldn't. Once I saw I couldn't factor, I kicked out the number that was giving me a problem. I kicked out the negative 11. I replaced it with a number that's better, or a number that I can more easily factor. Now I have this left side and I can factor this. To factor this, I need to think of two numbers that multiply to 9, but also add to 6. What two numbers can multiply to 9, but also add to 6? And it's very important, it has to add to a negative 6. So since it has to add to a negative 6, it must be negative 3 and negative 3. Just to explain why that works, negative 3 times negative 3, that's positive 9. Negative 3 times negative 3 plus negative 3, that's negative 6. So I just thought of two numbers that multiply to 9, add to negative 6. If you're ever stuck on that part, it's always the number before I squared it. Don't let that part trip you up. It's always the number before I squared it. So before I squared it was negative 3. That goes there and there. On the right side here, I have 11 plus 9. That's just going to be 20. Okay. Instead of, this is also kind of a complicated spot. Instead of writing x minus 3 twice, I'm going to write it one time squared. Okay? In the same way that like 3 squared is 2 3's because it's 3 times 3. This is x minus 3 twice. But instead of writing it twice, I'm going to write it once squared. Okay. So I've kicked out my number, I've replaced it, and I factored it. Now I have this is all factored. I now need to solve this for x. To solve this for x, I gotta get rid of this minus 3, and I gotta get rid of this square. I'm first going to get rid of the square. The opposite of squaring something would be taking the square root. And if I take the square root of the left side, I must also take the square root of the right side. When this square root and this square cancel, and I'm left with x minus 3 over here. Now I have the square root of 20. I don't know what the square root of 20 is, but I do know since it's an x, and it's being x squared, it could either be the positive or the negative version of the square root of 20. So I'm not going to forget to put plus minus. Just say it again, like the square root of 9 could be 3 or it could be negative 3. Because negative 3 squared is 9 and 3 squared is also 9. It could be the plus or the minus version. That's why I must put that there. I don't know what the square root of 20 is, but I can still simplify it. And move this over. To simplify the square root of 20, I'm going to take it over here. I need to think of two numbers that can multiply to 20 with one of them being a perfect square. What are the perfect squares? They're 4, 9, 16, 25. numbers that I can get to from squaring a different number. I know that 4 can go into 20, and it'd be 4 times 5. And the square root of 4 is nice. I know it's 2, because 2 times 2 is 4. So I can rewrite the square root of 20 as 2 square root 5. So instead of square root 20, I'm going to replace that with 2 square root 5. Lastly, I got to get the x by itself. There's still a plus 3 next to it. Sorry, there's still a minus 3 next to it. So to get rid of it, I'm going to plus 3. If I do it to one side, I must do it to the other side. And I'm going to write it 3 plus or minus 2 square root 5. 3 plus or minus 2 square root 5. And that's my answer. And no wonder my brain could not think of the factors of that in the beginning, because my brain doesn't do well with the square root of 5. But that's what those two numbers, 1 plus 1 minus, multiplied to 11, add to negative 6. If you need more help with the simplifying square root, I have another video on that. That might be helpful. I'm not going to go much more into that now, though. Now we're going to go more practice on completing the square. Completing the square again here. I see my 3 terms. I would like to think of 2 numbers that multiply to 28 and add to negative 4. And I can't do it. So I'm stuck with completing the square. To complete the square, step 1, I kick out the number I don't like. That's preventing me from factoring. That's minus 28. I add 28 to kick it out. I'm left with x squared minus 4x equals 28. Write that a tiny bit smaller. Equals 28. Now, there's a gap here. I need to figure out some number that I can put there that will help me, that I can factor. To figure out what that number is, I do b divided by 2 squared. My b term is here, negative 4, so it's negative 4 divided by 2 squared. Negative 4 divided by 2, that's negative 2. Negative 2 squared, that's positive 4. So I add 4 to both sides. Now, this left side is factorable. I can think of 2 numbers that multiply to 4 and add to negative 4. And that will always be the case, but this is factorable. In fact, it's so easily factorable, it's just going to be this number before I squared it. To prove it to you, what 2 numbers multiply to positive 4, but add to negative 4? That's going to be minus 2 and negative 2. Because negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Negative 2 plus negative 2 is negative 4. On my right side, I have 28 plus 4. That's just 32. Okay. Instead of writing this twice, though, I like to write it once. This is easier to solve for x. I kicked out, I replaced, I factored. Now I have to solve for x. There's a minus 2 I gotta get rid of, and there's a square I gotta get rid of. I'm gonna get rid of the square. Get rid of the square by square rooting both sides. I'm left with x minus 2 because these 2 canceled out. And again, I don't know what the square root of 32 is, but I know my answer is either going to be the positive or the negative version of it. Okay. I now have to simplify the square root of 32. So I'm going to go to the side here. What perfect square can go into 32? I'll do my best friend square root of 4. Square root of 4 times 8, because 4 times 8 is 32. And the square root of 4 is nice because it's 2 square root 8. But I'm not done because I can simplify the square root of 8 further and put that out to be square root 4 square root 2. And what's nice about the square root of 4 is that it's 2 again. These two 2's on the outside multiply. Very important. These 2 numbers on the outside multiply. 2 times 2, that's 4. So it's 4 radical 2. So instead of radical 32, I'm going to put 4 square root 2. Lastly, I gotta get rid of this minus 2. So I add 2, x equals 2 plus or minus 4 square root 2. And that is how I complete the square. But I got harder examples coming, so here we go. Number 3, I got more space too. Again, I would like to factor if I can. The name of the video is completing the square. You can't factor, you have to complete the square. So, to complete the square, I'm going to kick out the number that's preventing me from factoring by subtracting 20 from both sides. Now I have to find what number I can put in there. So step 1, kick out. Step 2, replace. B divided by 2 squared. My B is negative 8. So it's negative 8 divided by 2 squared. What is negative 8 divided by 2? Negative 4. What is negative 4 squared? That's 16. So I'm going to add 16 to both sides. Now I kicked out, I replaced, now I can factor. What multiplies to 16, add to negative 8? Well, I know that's going to be negative 4 and negative 4, because negative 4 plus negative 4, that's negative 8. Negative 4 times negative 4, positive 16. If by chance I'm stuck on that step, it's always the number before I squared it. This right side's a little scary here though, because negative 20 plus 16, different signs, so I subtract. 20 minus 16 is 4. Keep the sign of the bigger number, negative 4. Okay. I have these two factors. I don't like to write it out as 2. I'm going to write it as 1. I keep saying I don't like to write it out as 2. You have to write it as 1. So it's not like my decision. You must write it out as 1. Now I solve for x. To solve this for x, I square root both sides. Square root both sides. That causes that to cancel. I'm left with x minus 4 equals the square root of negative 4, which used to scare me. It doesn't anymore because we're in algebra now. I can figure out, instead of dealing with this negative, I take it out. And the square root of 4 is 2. And the square root of negative 1, I call that I. So the square root of negative 4 can be plus or minus 2i. Don't forget the plus or minus. Same thing applies. Lastly, to get the x by itself, I add 4. X equals, let me scroll this down a tiny bit, 4 plus or minus 2i. Nice. That one was a little bit tricky because I got square root of negative number. Not the biggest deal. I split it up to be negative 1 and the positive number. And negative 1 just becomes I. And becomes 2i. My last example. Again, I would like to factor. I can't. So I kick out the 28. Kick out the 28. X squared plus 12x equals 28. To make this even harder, give me 1 second. I'm going to make this plus 28. Sorry, so redo that. Plus 28. Now, to kick it out, I subtract 28. Subtract 28. Do I even like that number? I don't like that number. I'm going to make it plus 44. Sorry about that. Plus 44. To get rid of it, I subtract 44. You'll see why I did this in a second. If I do it to one side, I do it to the other side. It becomes x squared plus 12x equals negative 44. I kicked out. Step 2, I gotta replace. What number can I put there? To figure out what number to put there, I do b divided by 2 squared. My b is 12, so it's 12 divided by 2 squared. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 6 squared is 36. So I add 36 to both sides. Now I kicked out, I replaced, now I can factor. What multiplies to 36 adds to 12? That's going to be positive 6 and positive 6, because 6 times 6 is 36. 6 plus 6 is 12. Instead of writing it twice, I write it once. Squared. Negative 44 plus 36, and I get negative 8. That's why I did it before. I wanted another negative example. Now, I gotta solve this for x, get the x by itself. There's a plus 6, but first I gotta get rid of the square by square rooting. That makes the square root and the square, they cancel. Square root and the square, they cancel. I'm left with x plus 6 equals plus or minus whatever the square root of negative 8 is. So I'm going to take it over here, square root of negative 8. First, I take out the negative 1, and I'm the positive version. I split up negative 8 to be negative 8 times, I split up negative 8 to be negative 1 times 8. And the square root of negative 1, that's I. What's the square root of 8? I don't know, but I could simplify it further. Square root of 4, square root of 2. What's nice about the square root of 4? That is 2. So it becomes 2i radical 2. 2i radical 2. You put the I in between there. That's just the format that it goes in. So it's plus or minus 2i radical 2. Lastly, to get this x by itself, I subtract 6. If I do it to one side, I do it to the other side. And my final answer is negative 6 plus or minus 2i radical 2. One thing, just quickly before I go, I always put this number in front because you're not wrong if you put it in the back, right? You could put the answer as x equals plus or minus 2i radical 2 minus 6, right, with the minus 6 behind, because it doesn't matter exactly where it goes. The reason why I don't do that is because if I'm writing sloppy and I write the square root sign like that, and it goes too far, it's not very clear if the minus 6 is in the square root or if it's not. So in order to avoid any of those complications, I just put it in the front. Now I can't get it wrong. Sometimes you go and you're doing this quickly and you do a sloppy square root, and then that's a silly way to get it wrong. So I put it in front. I hope that helped. You understand complete the square.